1972, she disowned her black baby. Today, that secret just strode into church wearing a Fortune 500 crown. Small-town St. Christine hits the floor. Everybody else loses their minds. Want the full collision of love, lies, and billion-dollar payback. Smash follow, tag a friend, and brace for impact. She was the kind of mother who ironed bedsheets and never missed a PTA meeting, until the day she threw her own baby away. Christine Slaughter thought she had buried that shame forever. But some secrets have a way of digging themselves up. The morning sun filtered through the gingham curtains of Christine Slaughter's kitchen, casting cheerful patterns across her spotless counters. She hummed, while arranging fresh daisies in a mason jar, the picture of small-town perfection. At 42, Christine had built herself quite the reputation in Millbrook, Ohio, Sunday school teacher, hospital volunteer, and the woman who organized the most successful church bake sales in 3 counties. "Morning, honey," her husband Lloyd called from the breakfast nook, not looking up from his copy of the Millbrook Gazette. After 18 years of marriage, Lloyd Hardy had learned to appreciate the quiet rhythms of their childless home. "Coffee's fresh," Christine replied, her voice carrying that practiced sweetness she'd perfected over the years. She poured herself a cup and settled across from him, her manicured fingers drumming against the ceramic mug. The phone rang, interrupting the peaceful morning ritual. "Christine?" The voice belonged to Yvonne Maloney, head of the hospital auxiliary. "We've got a situation down here. That new family, the Washingtons, they're asking about our adoption records from the 70s. Something about a baby girl placed through our program." Christine's coffee cup rattled against the saucer. "What kind of information are they looking for?" "Birth records. They say they're trying to help their daughter find her biological family. Apparently she's some kind of business executive now, very successful. They seem to think." "I'll be right there." Christine cut her off, already standing. Her legs felt unsteady, like the kitchen floor had shifted beneath her feet. Lloyd looked up from his paper. "Everything all right?" "Just hospital business," she managed, grabbing her purse. "Back in an hour." But as Christine drove toward Millbrook General, her hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white, she knew this wasn't just hospital business. This was about the secret she'd buried 23 years ago, the baby she'd given away, the daughter she'd never spoken of, the child whose father had been black. She pulled into the hospital parking lot and sat for a moment, watching Yvonne through the glass doors of the main entrance. Yvonne was talking to a well-dressed black couple, their body language urgent but polite. The woman held a manila folder, thick with documents. Christine closed her eyes and remembered. Summer of 1971. She'd been 19, working as a waitress at Morrison's Diner, dating Robert Rice, the star quarterback. Then came the Pregivon test, the panicked conversations, the decision to keep it secret until the baby was born, and Christine saw her daughter's beautiful brown skin. The shame had been instant and consuming. In 1971, Millbrook, a white girl having a black baby, was social suicide. Her parents had been furious, her boyfriend had vanished, and Christine had spent exactly 3 days with her daughter before signing the adoption papers. She'd named her Sophia, after her grandmother. Then she'd moved to Columbus for 2 years, reinvented herself, and returned to Millbrook with a story about nursing school and a broken engagement. Now, watching the Washingtons through the hospital's glass doors, Christine felt that familiar cold dread settling in her stomach. If they found out, if anyone in Millbrook discovered that perfect Christine Slaughter had given birth to a mixed-race child, her carefully constructed life would crumble. She pulled out her Nokia phone and dialed. "Yvonne, it's Christine. I'm running late. Terrible headache. Could you handle the adoption inquiry? I'll review any paperwork later." Through the glass, she watched Yvonne nod and wave goodbye to the Washingtons. They walked to their car, a pristine BMW, and Christine caught a glimpse of their license plate. New York. Her daughter was successful. Successful enough to afford investigators, apparently. As Christine drove home, her mind raced through possibilities. She could destroy the records. She had access to the hospital files. She could claim they were lost in the basement flood of 9. She pulled into her driveway and sat in the car, staring at the white picket fence Lloyd had painted last spring. Everything about their life was perfect, predictable, safe. No children to worry about, no messy complications, no uncomfortable questions about the past. Lloyd appeared at the front door, concern creasing his weathered face. "Christine, you've been sitting out there for 10 minutes. She forced a smile and gathered her purse. "Just thinking about the hospital budget meeting tomorrow." But as she walked up the flagstone path to her perfect house, Christine Slaughter was thinking about something else entirely. How far she'd go to protect the life she'd built on a foundation of lies. That evening, as Lloyd dozed in his recliner watching The X-Files, Christine sat at her kitchen table with a notepad and pen. At the top of the page, she wrote, "Sophia, 1972. Below it, she began listing everyone who might know the truth. The past has a way of knocking when you least expect it, and sometimes it brings friends. Christine was about to learn that buried secrets make the loudest noise when they finally surface. 3 days after the hospital visit, Christine was reorganizing the church's Christmas decoration storage when Hazel DeLaura knocked on the fellowship hall door. "Christine, honey, you got a minute?" Hazel's voice carried that particular tone that meant gossip was brewing. At 68, Hazel had been Millbrook's unofficial information hub since the Eisenhower administration. "Of course," Christine replied, setting down a box of tinsel-covered angels. "What's on your mind?" Hazel settled into a folding chair with a conspiratorial lean. "Well, I was at the post office this morning, and Donna Pelosi, you know Donna, works at the bank. She mentioned something mighty interesting." Christine's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. "Oh? Seems there's been some fancy lawyers calling around town, New York lawyers, asking about adoption records from the early 70s. Donna said they contacted the bank about old safe deposit box records. Wanted to know about the Hendersons." The Hendersons. Christine remembered them. An older couple who'd handled private adoptions back when such things were done with handshakes and sealed envelopes. They'd both died in the late 80s. "That's odd," Christine managed. "Gets stranger," Hazel continued, pulling out a folded newspaper clipping. "I got curious, so I called my niece in Columbus. You know she works for that big law firm. Asked her to do some digging." Christine felt the color drain from her face. "Hazel, you didn't. Now don't go getting all worried. But look at this." Hazel unfolded the clipping, a business article from the Columbus Dispatch. The headline read, "Local woman named youngest Fortune 500 CEO." The photograph showed a stunning black woman in her early 20s, accepting an award. The caption read, "Sophia Patterson, 23, celebrates her appointment as CEO of Patterson Technologies, making her the youngest person ever to head a Fortune 500 company." Christine's vision blurred. Sophia, the name she'd whispered to her baby daughter before signing the adoption papers. "Pretty girl," Hazel said, watching Christine's reaction carefully. "Born in 1972, according to the article. Adopted as an infant right here in Ohio." Why are you showing me this?" Christine's voice came out as barely a whisper. Hazel folded the clipping back up, her eyes never leaving Christine's face. "Well, honey, it's just that you've always been so good with the hospital records. I thought maybe you'd remember something about the adoptions from that time. Might help these lawyers find what they're looking for." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Hazel knew something, or suspected it. I'll look into it," Christine said, standing abruptly. "But I really should get home. Lloyd's expecting dinner." "Of course, dear." Hazel rose slowly, her smile never wavering. "You know that Sophia Patterson, she's coming to Ohio next week, speaking at some business conference in Columbus. Maybe she'll visit Millbrook while she's here. Wouldn't that be something?" Christine's hands shook as she locked up the fellowship hall. In her car, she fumbled for her pager and called Yvonne Maloney. "Yvonne, it's Christine. Those adoption records from the 70s, I need you to pull everything we have. Tonight." "Tonight? Christine, what's the rush?" "Just research for the Hospital Historical Committee. Can you meet me at 8? That evening, Christine sat in the hospital's records room, surrounded by boxes of yellowed files. Yvonne had left an hour ago, muttering about the strange urgency, but Christine couldn't explain that she was racing against time, against discovery. She found her file easily enough. Baby girl Slaughter, born July 15th, 1972. The documents were all there, her medical records, the adoption placement forms, even a Polaroid photo of the baby. Christine stared at the picture. Her daughter, Sophia, had been beautiful even as a newborn. Mixed-race features that would grow into the stunning woman from the newspaper clipping. She was reaching for her lighter when she heard footsteps in the hallway. "Christine, you still here?" Lloyd's voice echoed through the empty corridor. She quickly shoved the files back into their box and called out, "Coming!" But as she walked toward the exit, Christine realized she wasn't the only one interested in those records. Someone had been through them recently. She could tell by the way they were organized. Too neat, too carefully arranged. The next morning brought more unwelcome news. The phone rang at 7 a.m., jarring Christine from an uneasy sleep. "Mrs. Hardy, this is Gary Washington. I believe you spoke with my wife at the hospital last week about adoption records." Christine's mouth went dry. Yes. How can I help you?" "We're driving down to Millbrook today. Our daughter Sophia is very interested in finding her birth family, and we have reason to believe her biological mother might still live in your area. We were hoping you might spare some time to meet with us. I'm not sure what help I could be. We understand you've been with the hospital for many years. Might know some of the families who arranged adoptions in the early 70s. Christine looked out her bedroom window at the peaceful street, at the neighbors watering their lawns and walking their dogs. Normal people with normal secrets. "What time were you thinking?" she heard herself say. After hanging up, Christine sat on the edge of her bed, her reflection staring back from the vanity mirror. At 42, she'd managed to build a life that looked exactly like what she'd always wanted. Respected, admired, safe. But looking at herself now, she could see it. The resemblance around the eyes, the shape of the mouth, features she'd passed on to a daughter she'd tried to forget. A daughter who was now successful enough to hire lawyers and ask uncomfortable questions. The Washingtons were coming to Millbrook, and Christine was running out of places to hide. Some conversations change everything in the span of a handshake, and Christine was about to discover that the daughter she'd abandoned had grown up to be someone she never expected. The question was, what would she do about it? The Washingtons arrived at Morrison's Diner at exactly 2 p.m., and Christine spotted them immediately through the window. They moved with the quiet confidence of people accustomed to being taken seriously. Gary in a navy suit despite the July heat. His wife, Veronica, elegant in a cream-colored dress. Christine had chosen Morrison's deliberately. It was where she'd worked 24 years ago, where she'd served coffee and pie while hiding her Pregavon under loose waitress uniforms. If they were going to discuss the past, she wanted to control the setting. "Mrs. Hardy?" Gary extended his hand as they approached her booth. "Thank you for meeting with us. Christine, please." She shook hands with both of them, noting the expensive watches, the quality of Veronica's handbag. Whatever their daughter had accomplished, it had clearly been substantial. They ordered coffee and small talk, carried them through the first few minutes. Gary was a retired teacher. Veronica had been a social worker. They'd been married 30 years, lived in a suburb of Rochester. "Sophia contacted us 6 months ago," Veronica began, stirring cream into her coffee. She'd been searching for her birth family for years, but hadn't had much luck. The adoption agency in Columbus had very limited records. "She hired a private investigator," Gary added. "A good one. He traced the original placement back to Millbrook General." Christine nodded, trying to appear helpful rather than terrified. The hospital did handle quite a few adoptions back then. Less regulation, more informal arrangements. "That's what we understood," Veronica said. "The investigator found records of several babies placed through your hospital in 1972. Sophia was born in July 15th. Christine remembered the date perfectly, had carried it with her for 23 years. "What kind of information is she looking for?" Christine asked. Gary and Veronica exchanged a glance. "Medical history primarily," Gary said. "She's been having some health concerns lately. Nothing serious, but her doctors would like a more complete family history. And she's curious about her roots," Veronica added gently. "She's accomplished a great deal in her young life, but she's always wondered about where she came from." "What kind of accomplishments?" Christine asked, though she already knew from Hazel's newspaper clipping. Veronica's face lit up with maternal pride. "She's CEO of Patterson Technologies, youngest person ever to run a Fortune 500 company. She started as an intern there 8 years ago and worked her way up. Brilliant mind for business. We're incredibly proud of her," Gary added. "But she's always felt like something was missing. She wants to understand her heritage. Both sides of it. Both sides." The words hit Christine like a physical blow. Of course, Sophia would want to know about her white mother's family, as well as her black father's. "The investigator believes her birth mother was quite young. Veronica continued. Possibly a teenager. The records suggest it was a difficult situation. Christine's coffee had gone cold in her hands. I imagine it would have been. 1972 was a different time, especially for complicated situations. Complicated how? Gary asked quietly. Here it was, the moment of truth. Christine could see it in their faces, the carefully neutral expressions that meant they already suspected. The investigator had been thorough. Well, Christine said slowly, interracial relationships weren't accepted the way they are now. A young white woman having a black man's baby. That would have been very difficult in a small town like Millbrook. The Washingtons nodded. They'd reached the same conclusion. Sophia understands that, Veronica said. She's not angry about the adoption. We gave her a wonderful life, and she knows it. But she'd like to meet her birth mother, if possible. Just to say hello. To say thank you for making a difficult choice. Thank you. Christine felt like she was drowning. I'll need to review the hospital records more carefully, she managed. It might take some time. Of course, Gary said, pulling out a business card. This is our hotel information. We're staying through the weekend. After they left, Christine sat in the diner for another hour, staring at their business card. The Washingtons were good people. She could see that clearly. They'd raised her daughter with love and given her opportunities Christine never could have provided. That evening, she found Lloyd in his workshop, tinkering with an old radio. The garage smelled of oil and sawdust, familiar and comforting. How was your meeting? He asked, without looking up. Informative, she said, perching on his workbench. Lloyd, what would you say if I told you I'd made a mistake? A big one, years ago. He set down his screwdriver and looked at her. After 18 years of marriage, he could read her moods like weather patterns. I'd say everyone makes mistakes, Christine. The question is what you do about them afterward. What if it was the kind of mistake that could ruin everything? Our life here, our reputation, our marriage? Lloyd was quiet for a long moment. Is this about those adoption people? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Christine, whatever happened before we met, that's your business. I married you, not your past. But that wasn't the whole truth, and they both knew it. Lloyd had married the woman she'd presented herself to be, respectable, uncomplicated, safe. He'd married the lie. That night, Christine lay awake, staring at the ceiling. In her bedside drawer was the newspaper clipping Hazel had shown her, and she'd read it a dozen times. Sophia Patterson was brilliant, successful, accomplished. She'd built a Fortune 500 company and was being featured in business magazines across the country. She was everything Christine might have been proud of, if she'd been brave enough to keep her. The thought that followed was darker. Sophia Patterson was also everything that could destroy the life Christine had built in Millbrook. At 3 a.m., Christine got up and went to the kitchen. She pulled out the phone book and found the number for the Washingtons' hotel. Her finger hovered over the rotary dial for 5 minutes before she set the phone back down. Some conversation, she realized, required more courage than she possessed. But as she headed back to bed, Christine made a decision. Tomorrow she would return to the hospital records room. She would find every document related to her daughter's adoption, and then she would decide whether to burn them or finally tell the truth. When Sophia Patterson arrived in Millbrook, she brought more than just questions about her past. She brought a fortune, a reputation, and the kind of determination that had made her a CEO at 23. Some secrets Christine was about to learn are too big to stay buried. Sophia Patterson stepped out of her rented Mercedes at the Millbrook Inn, and Christine watched from across the street, hidden behind the flower display at Finney's Florist. Even from a distance, the resemblance was unmistakable. They had the same nose, the same way of tilting their head when thinking. But where Christine had learned to make herself smaller, apologetic, Sophia commanded attention. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told she didn't belong. Magnificent, isn't she? Madeleine Finney appeared beside Christine, following her gaze. That's the young woman everyone's talking about. The CEO. You know about her? Honey, the whole town knows. Word spreads fast when someone famous comes to Millbrook. Madeleine arranged a bouquet of roses, her eyes never leaving Sophia. She's been asking questions. Real, specific questions. Christine's stomach dropped. What kind of questions? About families who lived here in the early 70s. Young mothers who might have given up babies for adoption. She's got some kind of list. A list. Of course she did. Sophia Patterson hadn't gotten to be a Fortune 500 CEO by leaving things to chance. "Excuse me." Christine left the flower shop and walked quickly toward the inn, her heart pounding. She needed to know what Sophia knew, what she planned to do with the information. The inn's lobby was elegantly appointed in colonial style, and Sophia sat in a wingback chair near the fireplace, reviewing documents spread across a coffee table. Up close, she was even more striking. Her father's rich skin tone, her mother's bone structure, an overall beauty that commanded attention. "Miss Patterson?" Christine approached slowly, her voice carefully neutral. Sophia looked up, and Christine felt the jolt of recognition. Not memory. Sophia had been too young when they'd parted, but something deeper, the biological pull between mother and child. "Yes." Sophia's voice was cultured, professional. "I'm Christine Hardy. I work at the hospital. I understand you've been researching adoptions from 1972. Sophia's expression sharpened. "Mrs. Hardy. Yes, I've been hoping to speak with you. Please sit down." Christine perched on the edge of a matching chair, trying to read Sophia's face. Did she know? Suspect? "I appreciate you taking time to meet with me," Sophia continued, gathering her documents. "I know this is probably an unusual request." "Not at all. The Washingtons explained your situation. They're wonderful people," Sophia said with genuine warmth. "But I'm sure you understand why I need to find my birth family. Medical history is important, especially now that I'm planning to have children of my own." Children. Christine felt something twist in her chest, a grandmother's longing she had no right to feel. "What have you discovered so far?" Christine asked. Sophia pulled out a manila folder. "My investigator has been very thorough. I was born July 15, 1972, at Millbrook General. My birth mother was 18 years old, unmarried. The father was listed as unknown on the records." Christine nodded, trying to appear professionally interested rather than personally devastated. "The adoption was arranged through the Henderson Agency," Sophia continued. "Unfortunately, their records were destroyed in a fire in 1989. But the hospital records suggest my birth mother came from a local family." "What makes you think that?" "Several things." Sophia consulted her notes. "First, she had family in the area. The records mention next-of-kin contacts. Second, she returned to sign additional paperwork 3 months after the birth, which suggests she was still local. And third," Sophia paused, studying Christine's face. "Third, she used a false name on the initial paperwork, but her real identity appears on the amended birth certificate. Christine Marie Slaughter." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge Christine couldn't cross back over. "That's quite specific information," Christine managed. "It is. And I know that Christine Slaughter currently lives in Millbrook. I know she works at the hospital where I was born. I know she married Lloyd Hardy in 1977. Sophia leaned forward slightly. "What I don't know is why she gave me away, or whether she'd be willing to meet with me now." Christine stared at her daughter, brilliant, successful, beautiful Sophia, and felt 23 years of guilt and regret crash over her like a wave. "Miss Patterson," she said carefully, "what would you hope to gain from meeting your birth mother?" "Closure, I suppose. Understanding. I don't blame her for the adoption. I had a wonderful childhood. But I'd like to know her story, what her life was like, what mine might have been different. And if that story was disappointing, if she wasn't the person you hoped she'd be." Sophia considered this. "Mrs. Hardy, I've built a company from nothing. I've faced boardrooms full of men who thought I was too young, too inexperienced, too different to succeed. I don't intimidate easily." She gathered her papers, her movements precise and confident. "I'm going to find Christine Slaughter, and I'm going to ask her to have coffee with me. One conversation. That's all I want." Christine stood on unsteady legs. "And if she refuses, then I'll respect that decision. But I hope she won't." Sophia's expression softened. "I hope she'll be curious about the life she gave me, about what became of the baby she carried for 9 months." That evening, Christine sat in her kitchen staring at the phone. She'd drafted a dozen different conversations in her head, but none of them seemed adequate. "How do you explain 23 years of silence to the daughter you abandoned?" Lloyd found her there at midnight, still fully dressed, still staring at the silent phone. "Christine? What's wrong?" She looked up at him, kind, patient Lloyd, who'd never asked too many questions about her past. "I need to tell you something," she said. something I should have told you years ago. And for the first time since 1972, Christine Slaughter began to tell the truth. She told him about Robert Rice, about the Preggy Vaughn, about the baby girl she'd given away. She told him about the shame, the fear, the years of pretending it had never happened. When she finished, Lloyd sat quietly for a long moment. "She's here, isn't she?" he said finally. "The girl who's been asking questions." Christine nodded. "What are you going to do?" Christine looked out the kitchen window at the dark street, at the life she'd built on a foundation of lies. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think that decision might be out of my hands. Because Sophia Patterson wasn't just any adopted child looking for answers. She was a Fortune 500 CEO with resources, determination, and the kind of quiet strength that suggested she always got what she went after. And what she was after was the truth about Christine Slaughter. When your past comes calling with a Fortune 500 budget and a team of lawyers, running isn't really an option. But Christine was about to try anyway. Some bridges, once burned, leave scars that never heal, and some daughters don't forgive. The knock on Christine's door came at 8 a.m. sharp, and she knew without looking that it would be Sophia. Through the peephole, she could see her daughter standing on the front porch, holding 2 coffee cups and wearing a determined expression. "Mrs. Slaughter?" Sophia's voice carried through the door. "I brought coffee. I thought we might talk." Christine's hands trembled as she undid the chain lock. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. 23 years of careful lies were about to come crashing down. "Miss Patterson." Christine opened the door, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. "This is unexpected." "I don't think it is," Sophia said gently. "May I come in?" Christine stepped aside, and Sophia entered the pristine living room, taking in the family photos on the mantel, the perfectly arranged furniture, the life that had no room for the daughter standing in its center. "You have a beautiful home," Sophia said, setting the coffee cups on the glass coffee table. "Thank you." Christine remained standing, her arms crossed defensively. "Miss Patterson, I'm not sure what you think you'll accomplish by—" "Mom." The word stopped Christine cold. Simple, devastating, true. "You are my mother," Sophia continued, settling into Lloyd's recliner as if she belonged there. "And I know this is difficult, but I'm not going anywhere until we talk." Christine sank onto the couch, her legs giving out. "How long have you known?" "Since yesterday. The investigator confirmed it Tuesday, but I wanted to approach you properly. Through the hospital, through the Washingtons. I wanted to give you a chance to tell me yourself. And when I didn't?" Sophia's smile was sad but understanding. "I decided to take matters into my own hands. It's a bad habit of mine. I don't wait for permission when I want something." Christine looked at her daughter, poised, successful, everything she might have been proud of in different circumstances. "What do you want from me?" Christine asked. "I want to understand. I want to know why you gave me away, and I want to know if you ever wondered what happened to me." The questions Christine had dreaded for 23 years, finally spoken aloud. "Every day," she whispered. "I wondered every day." Sophia leaned forward. "Then why didn't you look for me?" "Because I was a coward." The words came out harsher than Christine intended. "Because I was 19 and scared and selfish. Because keeping you would have ruined my life. And giving me away didn't?" Christine met her daughter's eyes. "I thought it would save it." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 23 years hanging between them. "Tell me about my father," Sophia said finally. Christine's breath caught. "What do you want to know?" "His name. What he was like. Whether he knew about me." "Robert Rice. He was the quarterback. Popular, charming. Everyone loved him." Christine's voice grew bitter. "Until he found out I was pregnant. Then he couldn't get out of town fast enough." "Did he know I was mixed race?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. "He knew," Christine said quietly. "He knew. And he said it wasn't his problem anymore." Sophia nodded slowly, processing this information with the same clinical detachment she probably used in boardrooms. "And your family? What did they say?" Christine laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My father called me a disgrace. My mother said I'd brought shame on the family name. They wanted me to give you away before anyone found out. So you did. So I did." Christine picked up her coffee cup with shaking hands. "I was 19, Sophia. I had no money, no education, no support. I thought I was doing what was best for you." "Maybe you were," Sophia said, surprising her. "The Washingtons gave me everything. Love, opportunities, confidence. They never made me feel like anything less than their chosen daughter. Then why are you here? Sophia was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the peaceful suburban street. Because I need to know where I come from, she said finally. Because I'm about to get married, and I want children, and I need to understand my medical history. But mostly, she turned back to Christine, because I need to know if you regret it. Not the adoption. I understand why you made that choice. But do you regret never reaching out? Never checking to see if I was okay? The question Christine had asked herself 10,000 times over the past 23 years. Yes, she whispered. Every day of my life. Sophia nodded, as if this was the answer she'd been hoping for. There's something else, she said. Something you need to know. Christine braced herself. I'm not here alone. I brought my fiancé with me. He's back at the hotel giving us space to talk. But he wants to meet you. What's his name? Stephen Johnson. He's a doctor, pediatric surgery. We met at a charity function 2 years ago. A doctor. Christine felt a stab of something that might have been pride. That's wonderful, she managed. He's black, Sophia added quietly. I thought you should know. The words hit Christine like a physical blow. Her daughter, her beautiful, successful daughter, was engaged to a black man. In 1995, in small-town Ohio, that still mattered to people like Christine's neighbors. How do you feel about that? Sophia asked, watching Christine's reaction carefully. Christine looked at her daughter, confident, accomplished, clearly happy, and felt something shift inside her chest. I feel like I have no right to feel anything about your choices, she said honestly. But if he makes you happy, then I'm glad. Sophia's smile was the first genuine one Christine had seen from her. He does, very much. The front door opened, and Lloyd walked in from his morning run, stopping short when he saw Sophia. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize we had company. Lloyd! Christine stood up, her heart pounding. This is Sophia Patterson. Sophia, this is my husband, Lloyd. Lloyd looked between them, and Christine could see the moment recognition dawned on his face. The resemblance was unmistakable now that he knew what to look for. Sophia, he said slowly. It's nice to meet you. Mr. Hardy. Sophia rose and extended her hand. I hope you don't mind me dropping by. Not at all. Lloyd shook her hand, his expression carefully neutral. I'll leave you two to talk. Actually, Sophia said, if you don't mind, I'd like you to stay. You're part of my mother's family now. That makes you important to me. My mother's family. The words made Christine's chest tight. Lloyd looked to Christine for guidance, and she nodded. He settled into the chair across from them, still in his running clothes, looking uncertain but willing. Sophia was just telling me about her fiancé, Christine said. Congratulations, Lloyd said sincerely. When's the wedding? Next spring. We're planning something small, just family and close friends. Sophia paused. I was hoping you might consider coming. The invitation hung in the air between them. Christine felt tears prick her eyes. Sophia, I don't know if that's... I'm not asking you to walk me down the aisle, Sophia interrupted gently. I'm not asking you to be my mother. I already have one, and she's wonderful. I'm just asking you to be there, to be part of my life, if you want to be. Christine looked at Lloyd, who nodded encouragingly. I'd like that, she whispered. I'd like that very much. But even as she said the words, Christine felt a familiar cold dread settling in her stomach. Because accepting Sophia's invitation meant more than just attending a wedding. It meant the people of Millbrook would learn that perfect Christine Slaughter had a secret. A beautiful, successful, mixed-race daughter she'd given away 23 years ago. And Christine wasn't sure she was brave enough for that kind of truth. Truth has a way of spreading through small towns like wildfire in dry grass. And Christine was about to learn that some secrets burn everything they touch. The question wasn't whether Millbrook would find out. It was what would happen when they did. The news broke on a Tuesday morning, courtesy of Hazel Delora and the Millbrook Gazette's weekly society column. Local woman reunites with daughter, read the headline, and beneath it, a photograph that made Christine's blood run cold. Sophia Patterson and Christine Slaughter, sitting together at Morrison's diner, looking like the mother and daughter they'd never been allowed to be. Christine stared at the newspaper in her kitchen, her coffee growing cold in her hands. She didn't remember anyone taking pictures yesterday, but then, in a town like Millbrook, someone was always watching. The phone started ringing at 7:30 a.m. "Christine?" Yvonne Maloney's voice was sharp with curiosity. "I just saw the paper. Is it true? That Patterson girl is your daughter?" "Yvonne, I can't talk right now. But Christine, this is incredible. You never mentioned having a daughter. And she's the CEO of that big company? When did you—" Christine hung up. The phone immediately rang again. This time it was Joan Eshu from the church auxiliary. Then Janet Waters from the hospital volunteer committee. Then Donna Pelosi from the bank. By 9 a.m., Christine had stopped answering the phone entirely. Lloyd found her sitting at the kitchen table, still in her robe, surrounded by newspapers and blinking answering machine lights. "How bad is it?" she asked without looking up. He picked up the Gazette and read the article aloud. Christine Slaughter, longtime Millbrook resident and hospital volunteer, recently reunited with her daughter Sophia Patterson, CEO of Patterson Technologies. The two were separated by adoption in 1972 and reconnected this week through Ms. Patterson's genealogical research. Mrs. Slaughter, who has been married to Lloyd Hardy for 18 years, expressed her joy at the reunion and her pride in her daughter's accomplishments. Christine laughed bitterly. "Joy and pride. Is that what they're calling it? Christine, do you know what this means?" She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "Everyone in town is going to know. About the Preg Yvonne, about the adoption, about the fact that I've been lying to them for 23 years. So what if they do?" Christine turned to stare at him. "So what? Lloyd, I teach Sunday school. I run the church bake sale. I'm on the hospital board. These people trusted me, respected me, and they still will. Will they? When they find out that the perfect Christine Slaughter had a baby out of wedlock, when they realize that baby was mixed race, when they understand that everything I've told them about my past was a lie." Lloyd crossed the room and took her hands. "Christine, it's 1995. People are more understanding now than they were in 1972. But even as he said it, they both knew it wasn't entirely true. Millbrook was a small town with long memories and short tolerance for scandal. The doorbell rang at 10 a.m. and Christine peered through the peephole to see Sophia standing on the porch, holding a copy of the newspaper. "I'm so sorry," Sophia said the moment Christine opened the door. "I had no idea they were going to print that story. The reporter approached me yesterday after I left here, and I thought it was just friendly small talk." "It's not your fault," Christine said, though her voice suggested otherwise. Sophia followed her into the living room, where the answering machine was still blinking with unheard messages. "Popular woman," Sophia observed. "Not anymore." Christine sank into her chair. "Sophia, you don't understand what this means in a town like Millbrook. People here have certain expectations. About what? About morality. About family values. About the kind of people who should be trusted with responsibility." Sophia studied her mother's face. "You're ashamed of me." "What? No, Sophia, that's not—" "You're ashamed that I'm mixed race. You're ashamed that people will know you had a relationship with a black man. You're ashamed that your perfect white life has been exposed as a lie." The words hung in the air like an accusation. "That's not true," Christine said weakly. "Isn't it?" Sophia stood up, her composure finally cracking. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more worried about your reputation than you are about having a relationship with your daughter. Sophia, please try to understand." "No, you understand something." Sophia's voice carried the authority of someone used to being heard. "I didn't come here to ruin your life. I came here to find my mother, but I won't apologize for existing, and I won't pretend to be something I'm not so you can save face with your neighbors." Christine felt tears burning her eyes. "It's not that simple." "It is that simple. You have a choice to make, Christine. You can be my mother with all the complications that entails, or you can keep being the perfect Mrs. Slaughter who never had a mixed-race daughter. But you can't be both." The ultimatum settled between them like a thrown gauntlet. "And if I choose my life here?" Christine asked quietly. "Then you choose your life here," Sophia replied. "And I go back to New York, and we pretend this conversation never happened." "Sophia, I've built a Fortune 500 company from nothing," Sophia interrupted. "I've faced down investors and board members and competitors who all wanted to see me fail. I don't need anyone's approval to live my life." She moved toward the door, then paused. "But I thought maybe, just maybe, my mother might be different. I thought maybe she'd learned something in 23 years about what really matters. After Sophia left, Christine sat alone in her living room, listening to the phone ring and ring. Outside, she could see Mrs. Henderson from across the street peering through her curtains, and Mr. Morrison from next door lingering by his mailbox longer than necessary. The whole town was watching, waiting to see what perfect Christine Slaughter would do next. At 2 p.m., she walked to Morrison's diner and ordered coffee. The conversation stopped when she entered, then resumed in hushed whispers. She could feel the weight of every stare, every whispered speculation. "Christine!" Hazel Delora appeared at her table as if summoned. "Honey, I read the most interesting article this morning." "I'm sure you did, Hazel. That daughter of yours is quite accomplished, though I have to say it's surprising news. I mean, you've never mentioned having children." Christine looked up at Hazel, at the avid curiosity in her eyes, the barely concealed excitement of having fresh gossip to spread. "There are a lot of things I've never mentioned, Hazel," she said quietly. "That doesn't make them less real." She left money on the table and walked out, leaving Hazel staring after her. That evening, Christine found Lloyd in his workshop, but he wasn't tinkering with anything. He was just sitting, thinking. "The church called," he said without looking up. "They want to discuss your teaching position." Christine's heart sank. "What did you tell them?" "I told them to call back when they'd read their Bibles and remembered what Jesus said about forgiveness and family." Despite everything, Christine smiled. "You didn't. I did." Lloyd finally looked at her. "Christine, I married you because I loved you. All of you, including the parts you thought you needed to hide. If these people can't accept that you made a difficult choice as a scared teenager, then they're not the kind of people whose opinions matter. And if they fire me from everything? If they make our lives here impossible?" Lloyd was quiet for a moment. "Then maybe it's time to find out who we really are when we're not trying to be who everyone else thinks we should be." That night, Christine lay awake thinking about Sophia's ultimatum. She could keep her perfectly constructed life in Millbrook, built on a foundation of lies and sustained by the approval of people who'd never really known her. Or she could choose her daughter, brilliant, successful, challenging Sophia, and face whatever consequences came with that choice. The decision, Christine realized, would define not just her future, but who she'd been all along. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that show us who we really are, and Christine was about to discover that some bridges are worth burning if they lead to the right shore. But in small towns, the flames tend to spread quickly. Christine found Sophia in the hotel lobby at 8 a.m., packed and ready to leave. Her daughter sat in the same wingback chair where they'd first really talked, but now she looked distant, unreachable. "You're leaving," Christine said, settling into the chair across from her. "My flight's at noon." Sophia's voice was professional, detached. "I have a board meeting Thursday." "Sophia, about yesterday." "You don't need to explain." Sophia closed her laptop and slipped it into her briefcase. "I understand your position. This is your home. These are your people. I was naive to think that would change just because I showed up." Christine studied her daughter's face, seeing Lloyd's quiet strength there and her own stubborn determination. "What if I told you I've made my choice?" Sophia's hand stilled on her briefcase. "What choice?" "You. I choose you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and irrevocable. "What does that mean exactly?" Sophia asked carefully. Christine took a deep breath. "It means I'm going to tell the truth. To everyone. About 1972. About why I gave you up. About what I've been hiding all these years. And if it costs you everything, then it costs me everything." Christine leaned forward. "Sophia, I've spent 23 years being ashamed of the best thing I ever did. I gave you life, and I gave you to people who could love you the way you deserved. That's not something to be ashamed of." For the first time since the newspaper article, Sophia smiled. "What changed your mind?" "Lloyd, partly, but mostly you." Christine reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. "I wrote this last night. It's a letter to the Millbrook Gazette." Sophia took the letter and read it silently. Christine watched her daughter's face change as she read. Surprise, then something that might have been pride. "You're going to publish this?" "I'm going to try. And if they won't print it, I'll stand up at the next town council meeting and read it aloud." Sophia folded the letter carefully. "This will change everything for you. I know. People will talk. Some of them will judge you harshly. I know that too. Sophia stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street. In New York, I'm just another successful businesswoman. Here, I'm the mixed-race daughter who exposed Christine Slaughter's secret. Some people will always see me that way, and some people will see you as the brilliant woman who became a Fortune 500 CEO at 23, Christine replied. Some people will see you as the daughter I'm proud to claim. Sophia turned back to her. Are you? Proud of me? Enormously. Terrified, but enormously proud. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, 23 years of distance beginning to close. There's something else, Christine said. I want to meet Stephen, your fiancé. I want to apologize to him for the circumstances of this introduction, and I want to welcome him to whatever family we're building here. Sophia's smile was radiant. He's upstairs. He was giving us space, but I think he'd like to meet you. 20 minutes later, Christine found herself shaking hands with Dr. Stephen Johnson, a tall, gentle man with kind eyes and an easy laugh. He was everything she might have hoped for in a son-in-law, if she'd allowed herself to hope. Mrs. Slaughter, he said warmly. Sophia's told me so much about you. I'm sure she has, Christine replied. Probably not all of it flattering. Actually, quite the opposite. Stephen glanced at Sophia. She's been talking about your courage in making the adoption decision, about how you put her needs first even when it cost you everything. Christine felt tears prick her eyes. I'm not sure courage is the right word. What would you call it? Christine considered the question. Love, I think. Imperfect, complicated, 23 years too late love. That afternoon, Christine walked into the offices of the Millbrook Gazette and placed her letter on the editor's desk. Warren Schmoke looked up from his computer, his expression curious. Christine, what can I do for you? I'd like you to print this, in this week's edition if possible. Warren unfolded the letter and read it, his eyebrows rising with each paragraph. When he finished, he looked up at Christine with something like awe. You're sure about this? I'm sure. It's going to cause quite a stir. I'm counting on it. Warren leaned back in his chair. Christine, I've known you for 15 years. I've never seen you do anything that wasn't carefully planned and perfectly executed. This letter, it's brave, but it's also risky. The riskiest thing I ever did was give away my daughter, Christine replied. Everything else is just details. The letter appeared in Wednesday's Gazette, on the front page under the headline, A Mother's Truth. Christine had written it carefully, choosing each word to convey not just the facts, but the emotion behind them. To the people of Millbrook, many of you have known me for nearly 2 decades as Christine Slaughter, later Christine Hardy. You've known me as a hospital volunteer, a Sunday school teacher, a neighbor. You've trusted me with your children's education and your community's charitable works. Last week, some of you learned that I have a daughter. Her name is Sophia Patterson, and she is 23 years old, brilliant, successful, and beautiful. She is also mixed race, which in 1972 was reason enough for a 19-year-old girl to give her baby away, rather than face the shame and judgment of her community. I made that choice out of fear of disappointing my family, fear of social ostracism, fear of being unable to provide for a child when I could barely provide for myself. I have regretted it every day since. Sophia Patterson is the CEO of Patterson Technologies, a Fortune 500 company. She has accomplished more in her 23 years than most people do in a lifetime. She is engaged to a pediatric surgeon and planning to start a family of her own. She is everything I might have been proud of if I had been brave enough to keep her. I am writing this letter because I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of hiding who I am and what I've done. I am tired of living a life built on the foundation of a lie. I gave birth to a daughter, and I gave her away. And I have spent 23 years pretending it never happened. But it did happen, and she is extraordinary, and I am more proud of her than I have ever been of anything in my life. If that changes how you see me, I understand. If it costs me your trust or your friendship, I accept that. But I will not apologize for bringing Sophia Patterson into this world, and I will not apologize for claiming her as my daughter now. Some bridges are worth burning if they lead to the right shore. Sincerely, Christine Slaughter Hardy. The response was immediate and intense. By Thursday morning, Christine's phone was ringing constantly, some calls supportive, others less so. The church board requested a meeting. The hospital auxiliary wanted to discuss her position. The town council received a petition demanding her removal from the library board. But there were surprises too. Alexis Lowy from the bank stopped by to say she'd always suspected Christine was hiding something, and she was glad to finally know what it was. Jesse Grabar from the hardware store mentioned that his own sister had given up a baby in the 60s, and how much courage it must have taken to speak publicly about it. And then there was the phone call that changed everything. "Mrs. Hardy, this is Robert Rice." Christine's blood went cold. Robert Rice, Sophia's father, the quarterback who'd abandoned them both 23 years ago. "I saw the article in the paper," he continued, "about Sophia. I wanted to talk to you about that." Christine gripped the phone tighter. "What about it, Robert?" "I think it's time I told the truth, too. When the past comes calling, it rarely comes alone." And Christine was about to discover that some secrets have a way of multiplying when exposed to daylight. But truth, like fire, burns clean, even when it burns everything you thought you knew. Robert Rice stood on Christine's front porch, looking older than his 44 years, his once golden hair now receding, his quarterback physique softened by 2 decades of comfortable living. But his eyes were the same, uncertain, apologetic, still looking for someone else to solve his problems. "Hello, Christine," he said when she opened the door. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." She hadn't agreed to anything. He'd simply shown up after calling, the same way he'd operated in high school, assuming his charm would smooth over any inconvenience. "Robert." She didn't invite him in. "What do you want?" "I read your letter in the paper. About Sophia." He shifted uncomfortably. "I wanted to talk to you about that. 23 years too late for talking, don't you think?" "Christine, please. I know I handled things badly back then." "Badly." The word came out sharp enough to cut. "You disappeared, Robert. You left town the day after I told you I was pregnant. I was 18. I was scared. I was 19 and pregnant. You think I wasn't scared?" They stared at each other across the threshold, 23 years of history hanging between them like a poison cloud. "What do you want, Robert?" she asked again. "I want to meet her. Sophia. I want to meet my daughter." Christine felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Your daughter? I know I don't have any right to ask." "You're right. You don't. But she's my child too, Christine. My blood. And from what I've read, she's done pretty well for herself." There it was, the calculation behind his sudden interest. Sophia Patterson, Fortune 500 CEO, was worth knowing now in a way that baby girl slaughter hadn't been in 1972. "She doesn't know about you," Christine said. "I told her you were listed as unknown on the birth certificate. But that's not true, is it? We both know I'm her father." Christine stepped outside and closed the door behind her, not wanting Lloyd to overhear this conversation. "Robert, why are you really here?" He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I'm having some financial difficulties, business problems. I thought maybe if Sophia knew about me, she might be willing to help." "Help? She's obviously successful. And family should help family, right?" Christine stared at him, amazed that even after all these years he could still surprise her with his capacity for selfishness. "You want to blackmail your own daughter?" "It's not blackmail. It's just making contact, getting to know each other. If she chooses to help her father out, that's her decision." "Get off my property." "Christine, get off my property before I call the police." Robert's expression hardened. "You can't keep her from me forever. I have rights. You gave up your rights in 1972 when you ran away. I'll hire a lawyer. I'll prove paternity. I'll contact her directly if I have to." Christine felt panic rising in her chest. After everything she and Sophia had been through, the progress they'd made, the relationship they were building, Robert could destroy it all with his greed and selfishness. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "Just an introduction, a chance to meet her, to explain my side of things. And if she doesn't want to help you financially?" Robert shrugged. "Then at least I'll have tried." That evening, Christine called Sophia at her hotel. She was scheduled to fly back to New York in the morning, but Christine needed to warn her about Robert before he could make contact on his own. "There's something else you need to know," Christine said without preamble. "About your father. I thought you said he was unknown. I lied. I know exactly who he is, and he's here in Millbrook. He wants to meet you." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "What's he like?" Christine chose her words carefully. "He's not the man I thought he was when I was 19. And his motives for wanting to meet you now aren't pure. What do you mean? He's having money problems. He sees you as a potential solution to those problems. Ah, Sophia's voice carried a note of understanding. The long-lost father routine. I've seen it before in business. People who suddenly discover family connections when there's money involved. I'm sorry, Sophia. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. You were protecting me. I understand that. Sophia paused. Do you think I should meet him? That's your decision. But I want you to know that whatever you choose, I'll support you. What would you do? Christine considered the question. Honestly, I'd probably meet him just to satisfy my curiosity. But I'd go in with my eyes wide open about what he really wants. The next morning, Sophia changed her flight to the afternoon and arranged to meet Robert at Morrison's diner. She asked Christine to come with her, and though Christine dreaded the encounter, she agreed. Robert was already there when they arrived, dressed in his best suit and wearing the same boyish smile that had once made Christine's heart race. But Sophia looked at him with the cool assessment of someone who'd spent years evaluating people's motives. Mr. Rice, she said, extending her hand. I'm Sophia Patterson. Sophia. Robert's voice was warm, paternal. It's so good to finally meet you. You look just like your mother did at your age. Sophia glanced at Christine, who was sitting rigidly in the booth beside her. Actually, I'm told I look more like you, Sophia said neutrally. Similar bone structure around the eyes. Robert beamed as if this was the highest compliment he'd ever received. They ordered coffee and made small talk for a few minutes, Robert asking about Sophia's business, her life in New York, her success. He was charming, interested, playing the role of the proud father perfectly. Finally, Sophia cut to the chase. Mr. Rice, why did you want to meet me now? After 23 years, Robert shifted uncomfortably. Well, when I read about you in the paper, I realized I'd missed out on knowing my daughter. I wanted to make up for lost time. And it has nothing to do with your financial situation? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Robert's smile faltered. I don't know what you mean. Sophia opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. I had my investigator do some research on you, Mr. Rice. Your construction company is in bankruptcy. You owe back taxes. Your house is in foreclosure. Your ex-wife is suing you for unpaid alimony. Robert's face went pale. Sophia, I can explain. You can explain why you want to establish a relationship with the daughter you abandoned, right at the moment when that daughter might be useful to you financially. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Sophia's voice was calm, professional, deadly. You're not here because you missed me, or because you're proud of what I've accomplished. You're here because you need money, and you think I'm a soft touch. Robert looked desperately at Christine. Tell her, Christine. Tell her we were young. We made mistakes. We were young, Christine agreed. But only one of us made mistakes. The other one ran away. Sophia closed her folder and stood up. Mr. Rice, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. It's been educational. Sophia, wait. I'm not giving you money. I'm not bailing you out of your financial problems. And I'm not interested in having a relationship with someone whose only interest in me is what I can do for them. She picked up her briefcase and looked down at Robert, who was staring at her with a mixture of desperation and anger. But I will give you one piece of advice, she continued. The daughter you abandoned grew up to be someone who can see through manipulation from a mile away. So if you're thinking about trying to pressure me or my mother, or if you're considering going to the press with some sob story about the daughter who won't help her poor father, don't. You can't just... I can do whatever I want. I have excellent lawyers, unlimited resources, and a very low tolerance for people who try to take advantage of family connections they did nothing to earn. Sophia turned to Christine. Are you ready to go? As they walked out of the diner, Christine could hear Robert calling after them, but Sophia didn't look back. That was impressive, Christine said once they were in the car. That was business, Sophia replied. I've dealt with his type before. They're always looking for the easy solution, the quick fix, the person they can manipulate into solving their problems. I'm sorry you had to see that side of your heritage. Sophia was quiet for a moment. You know what's funny? I'm not, because it shows me what you were up against in 1972. A selfish boy who ran away from responsibility, and a town that would have judged you for his cowardice. She looked at Christine. You made the right choice, giving me to the Washingtons. They taught me to stand up for myself, to see people clearly, to never settle for less than I deserve. Including from birth parents who show up 23 years too late? Sophia smiled. Especially from them. That afternoon, as Sophia prepared to leave for the airport, she and Christine stood in the hotel lobby saying goodbye. But this time, it felt like a beginning rather than an ending. "I'll call you when I get back to New York," Sophia said. "And I'd still like you to come to the wedding, if you're willing. I'd be honored. It might be complicated. Some people in Millbrook won't approve of you having a relationship with me." Christine thought about the letter she'd published, about the calls she'd received, about the bridges she'd already burned. "Sophia, I spent 23 years worrying about what other people thought. I'm done with that now." Sophia hugged her then, the first real embrace they'd shared since she was 3 days old. "I'm proud of you," Sophia whispered. "For the letter, for standing up to Robert, for choosing me even when it was hard." "I'm proud of you too," Christine replied, "for everything you've become, for giving me a second chance, for being strong enough to handle the truth." As Sophia's taxi pulled away, Christine stood on the sidewalk waving until it disappeared around the corner. Then she walked back to her car, thinking about what came next. The hardest part was over. She'd told the truth, claimed her daughter, and faced down the ghost of her past. Whatever happened now, she'd face it as herself. Not the perfect Christine Slaughter, but the real woman who'd made difficult choices and learned to live with the consequences. It was, she realized, the first time in 23 years that she felt completely free. The truth has a way of settling like dust after a storm, and Christine was about to discover that some relationships survive the shaking while others crumble completely. But from the rubble of old lies, new foundations can be built. 2 weeks after Sophia's departure, Christine sat in the conference room at Millbrook Community Church, facing a panel of 5 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The meeting had been requested by several concerned parishioners, though everyone knew it was really a trial. "Christine," began Mike McKee, the board chairman, "we've called this meeting to discuss your position as Sunday school teacher in light of recent revelations." Christine folded her hands in her lap and met his gaze steadily. "What revelations would those be, Mike?" "Now, Christine, you know what we're talking about." This from Henry Brown, who'd been deacon for 30 years and never met a moral judgment he didn't like. The letter in the paper, the admission about your past, about having a daughter, about having a child out of wedlock, Henry clarified, as if the distinction mattered. About deceiving this congregation for nearly 2 decades about your moral character. Christine felt her temper flare, but she kept her voice level. "My moral character, parents are concerned," added Jesse Grabar, though he wouldn't meet her eyes. "About whether someone someone with your history should be teaching their children." "What exactly about my history concerns them, Jesse?" The room grew uncomfortable. These were people who'd known her for years, who'd trusted her with their children's spiritual education, who'd praised her dedication and effectiveness. But they were also people who valued reputation over reality, appearance over truth. "Christine," Mike tried again, "surely you understand our position. The church has certain standards." "Standards?" Christine stood up abruptly. "Let me ask you something, Mike. In the 8 years I've been teaching Sunday school, how many children have I helped? How many kids who were struggling with their faith or their families found comfort in my classroom? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Tommy Morrison was failing every subject until I spent extra time helping him with reading. Sophia Beth Waters was being bullied until I taught her class about kindness and acceptance. Jennifer Lowy started coming to church again after I helped her through her parents' divorce." Christine looked around the room at faces she'd considered friends. "But none of that matters now, does it? Because you've learned that when I was 19 years old, I made a mistake. I got pregnant. I gave birth to a beautiful daughter, and I made the difficult decision to give her to a family who could provide for her better than I could." "Christine," Henry began. "I'm not finished." Her voice carried an authority that made them all sit back. "That daughter grew up to be a Fortune 500 CEO. She's engaged to a pediatric surgeon. She's successful, kind, and generous. She's everything any parent would be proud of. And I am proud of her." She gathered her purse and moved toward the door. "You want my resignation? You have it. But not because I'm ashamed of my past or my daughter, because I've finally learned the difference between people who practice Christianity and people who just preach it. The room was silent as she walked out, but the church wasn't the only confrontation waiting for her. The hospital auxiliary met the next day, and the conversation was eerily similar. Yvonne Maloney, who'd been Christine's friend for 15 years, led the charge with the same moral outrage, the same concerns about standards and reputation. This time, Christine didn't wait for them to ask for her resignation. She simply stood up in the middle of Yvonne's speech about the importance of trust in our volunteer organization and walked out. The library board meeting was scheduled for Thursday, but Christine received a call Wednesday morning canceling it. Apparently, the board had voted to restructure her position while she was dealing with personal matters. By Friday, Christine had been effectively removed from every volunteer position she'd held in Millbrook. She was cleaning out her desk at the hospital when Warren Schmoke from the Gazette found her. "Christine, got a minute?" She looked up from the box of personal items she'd been packing. "If you're here for a follow-up story about my fall from grace, you can save your time." "Actually, I'm here about something else." Warren pulled up a chair. "I've been getting calls all week. About you. About the letter you wrote. About what's been happening. I'm sure you have. Not the calls you'd expect, though. I've heard from 3 other women who gave up babies for adoption in the 70s. They want to thank you for speaking out, for making it okay to talk about their experiences." Christine stopped packing and looked at him. "I've heard from parents who said your Sunday school class was the best their kids ever had, and they're furious about the church's decision. I've heard from hospital patients who said you were the kindest volunteer they'd ever encountered." Warren leaned forward. "And I've heard from a lot of people who think this town has lost its damn mind." "What are you saying, Warren?" "I'm saying that for every person who's turned their back on you this week, there are 2 more who think you've been treated unfairly. They're just not as loud as the moral majority." As if to prove his point, Alexis Lowy appeared in the doorway. "Christine, I hope you don't mind me interrupting." "Not at all, Alexis." Alexis entered the room, looking nervous but determined. "I wanted to tell you that what happened at the church board meeting was wrong. Completely wrong." "That's kind of you to say." "It's not kind. It's true. My daughter Jennifer, after my divorce, she was so angry, so hurt. She refused to come to church, said God didn't care about her, but you spent hours with her. You helped her understand that sometimes bad things happen to good people, and that doesn't mean God has abandoned them." Alexis wiped her eyes. "She's in college now, studying to be a social worker because she wants to help other kids the way you helped her. And these people want to fire you because you had a baby when you were 19. Warren was taking notes. "Would you be willing to go on record with that, Alexis?" "Absolutely." Over the next hour, more people arrived. Donna Pelosi from the bank, whose son had struggled with learning disabilities until Christine helped him find his confidence. Joan Eshu, whose elderly mother had been regularly visited by Christine during her final illness. Janet Waters, whose daughter Sophia Beth had been transformed from a shy, bullied child into a confident young woman thanks to Christine's mentoring. They all had stories. They all had reasons to be grateful to Christine Slaughter, reasons that had nothing to do with her past and everything to do with who she'd become. "This is quite a turnout," Warren observed. "Mind if I ask why you all decided to come forward now?" "Because," said Donna Pelosi firmly, "silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Christine Slaughter has done more good in this town than half the people who are judging her. And if we don't speak up for people like her, what does that say about us?" That evening, Christine sat in her kitchen with Lloyd, reading the flood of supportive phone messages that had started coming in as word spread about the impromptu gathering at the hospital. "Seems like you underestimated the people of Millbrook," Lloyd said. "Some of them anyway." The phone rang, and Christine answered to hear Sophia's voice. "Mom? I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing." "Mom." The word still made Christine's heart skip. "I'm doing better than I expected," Christine said honestly. "It turns out I have more friends than I realized." "Good, because I have some news. Stephen and I have been talking, and we'd like to move the wedding to Millbrook, have it at the church there if they'll let us." Christine nearly dropped the phone. "Sophia, you don't have to do that. I know it's complicated here. It's not complicated for me. You chose me, publicly, even when it cost you everything. The least I can do is choose you back. But what about your friends, your colleagues in New York? They can travel to Ohio for one weekend. Besides, I think it's time Millbrook met the rest of the Patterson family. My parents are excited about visiting a small Midwest town, and Stephen has about 50 relatives who've never been out of New York City. Christine laughed despite herself. That should be interesting. It'll be perfect. Assuming, of course, that you'll help me plan it. I'd love to. After hanging up, Christine sat quietly for a moment, thinking about the week's events. She'd lost her volunteer positions, faced down the moral guardians of Millbrook, and been forced to confront 23 years of buried shame. But she'd also found her daughter, learned who her real friends were, and discovered that the truth, however painful, was better than the most comfortable lie. Regrets? Lloyd asked, reading her expression. Christine considered the question. A week ago, she'd been perfect Christine Slaughter, respected, admired, safe in her carefully constructed life. Now she was just Christine Hardy, flawed, honest, free. Not one, she said. Outside, the summer evening was settling over Millbrook, and Christine could see her neighbors going about their evening routines. Some of them would probably never speak to her again. Others would judge her for the rest of her life. But some, more than she'd expected, would see her as she really was. A woman who'd made difficult choices, learned from her mistakes, and finally found the courage to live authentically. For the first time in 23 years, that felt like enough. Some stories end where they began, but the best ones end where they were always meant to. And Christine was about to discover that the most beautiful bridges are built from the ashes of the ones we burned. 6 months later, Millbrook Community Church had never looked more beautiful. White roses and baby's breath adorned every pew, and the afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the altar where Sophia Patterson stood in her grandmother's wedding dress, radiant and confident. Christine sat in the front row, wearing the navy blue dress Sophia had helped her pick out during their shopping trip to Columbus. Beside her, Lloyd squeezed her hand as they watched their daughter, exchange vows with Dr. Stephen Johnson. The church was packed with an interesting mix: Sophia's business colleagues from New York, the Washingtons and their extended family, Stephen's relatives who'd driven down from Detroit, and a surprising number of Millbrook residents who'd decided that love was more important than old prejudices. "Do you, Sophia, take Stephen to be your lawfully wedded husband?" asked Reverend Federico Webb, who'd replaced the previous minister after a rather heated congregational meeting about the church's treatment of Christine. "I do," Sophia said, her voice clear and strong. Christine felt tears prick her eyes. She'd missed so many moments in Sophia's life. First steps, first day of school, graduation, countless birthdays and holidays. But she was here for this one, and it felt like a gift she'd never expected to receive. As the ceremony concluded and the couple kissed to thunderous applause, Christine caught sight of some familiar faces in the congregation. Warren Schmoke from the Gazette, who'd been documenting Sophia's return to Millbrook with respectful coverage that focused on family reunification rather than scandal. Alexis Lowy and her daughter Jennifer, who'd driven up from college to attend. Even Yvonne Maloney from the hospital, who'd quietly apologized to Christine a month earlier and asked if she'd consider returning to volunteer work. The reception was held at the Millbrook Inn, which had been transformed into something magical. Sophia had spared no expense, but more importantly, she'd insisted on incorporating local touches. Morrison's Diner had catered the dinner, and the high school jazz band provided music between sets by Stephen's favorite R&B group from New York. Christine found herself standing with Veronica and Gary Washington, watching Sophia and Stephen dance to their wedding song. "She's beautiful," Veronica said softly. "We always knew she would be, but seeing her this happy—" "You did an amazing job raising her," Christine replied. "I can never thank you enough for that." Gary put his arm around both women. "You know what I think? I think she got the best of both families. Our love and support when she needed it, and your strength and determination in her DNA." "Speaking of strength," Veronica added with a smile, "I heard about what you did with the church board, standing up to them like that." Christine laughed. "I'm not sure it was strength as much as finally running out of patience with other people's judgment. Sometimes they're the same thing," Gary observed. As the evening wore on, Christine mingled with the guests, marveling at how different her life had become. Robert Riley, who owned the hardware store, mentioned that his grandson was hoping Christine might return to Sunday school teaching. Apparently word had gotten out that she was the best teacher the church had ever had. Joan Eshu asked if Christine might consider running for town council, since Millbrook needed people with real integrity in leadership positions. But the most surprising conversation came from Hazel Delora, who approached Christine near the end of the reception. "Christine, honey, I owe you an apology," Hazel said, looking genuinely contrite. "I was so focused on the gossip aspect of your story that I missed the real story." "What do you mean?" "A young woman faced with an impossible situation, making the hardest decision of her life to give her child the best possible future, and that child growing up to be someone extraordinary." Hazel shook her head. "That's not scandal. That's sacrifice. That's love." Christine felt her throat tighten. "Thank you, Hazel. That means more than you know." As the reception wound down, Sophia found Christine on the inn's back porch, looking out at the garden, where fairy lights twinkled in the trees. "Penny for your thoughts," Sophia said, settling into the chair beside her. "Just thinking about how different everything is from what I expected," Christine replied. "6 months ago I thought my life was perfect. Turns out it was just empty. Do you miss it? The perfect life?" Christine considered the question. "I miss the simplicity of it sometimes. It was easier when I didn't have to worry about anyone else's feelings or needs. But easier isn't better." Sophia was quiet for a moment, still in her wedding dress, looking like something from a fairy tale. "I have something for you," she said, pulling a small wrapped box from her purse. "I wanted to give it to you privately." Christine unwrapped the box to find a delicate gold locket. Inside was a tiny photograph, the Polaroid from Christine's hospital file, the one showing Sophia as a newborn. "I found it in the adoption records," Sophia explained. "The investigator made copies of everything. I thought you might want to have it back." Christine stared at the photograph, remembering the day it was taken. She'd been so young, so scared, so certain she was doing the right thing even as her heart was breaking. "Thank you," she whispered. "There's something else." Sophia reached into her purse again and pulled out an envelope. "Stephen and I have been talking about starting a family. When we do, I want our children to know their grandmother, all of their grandparents." She handed Christine the envelope. "That's a key to our house in New York. I want you to visit. I want you to be part of our lives, really part of them." Christine opened the envelope to find not just a key, but a plane ticket to New York, dated for the following month. "Sophia, I can't." "You can, and you will, because we have 23 years to make up for, and I'm not wasting any more time." They sat together in comfortable silence, mother and daughter, watching the fairy lights dance in the garden. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of the reception winding down. Laughter, music, the clatter of dishes being cleared. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd kept you?" Christine asked. Sophia considered this. "Sometimes, but not in a sad way. More like curiosity about an alternate timeline. In that timeline, maybe you would have struggled financially but found strength you didn't know you had. Maybe I would have grown up feeling more secure about my identity. Maybe we both would have been different people. Do you think we would have been happier? I think we would have been different, but I don't know if we would have been better." Sophia turned to look at Christine. "The path we took led us both to who we are now, and I like who we are now." Christine reached over and took her daughter's hand. "So do I." Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the cleanup was finished, Christine and Lloyd sat in their kitchen, still dressed in their wedding finery, sharing a cup of coffee and leftover wedding cake. "Good day?" Lloyd asked. "The best day I've had in 23 years, Christine replied. "What happens now?" Christine looked around their kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd sat 6 months ago, terrified that her carefully constructed life was about to crumble. The same kitchen where she'd made the decision to tell the truth, to choose her daughter, to burn the bridges that had kept her trapped on the wrong side of her own life. "Now we see what we can build from the ashes," she said. Lloyd raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To new beginnings. To new beginnings," Christine agreed. Outside, Millbrook settled into its peaceful evening rhythms. But inside the house on Maple Street, Christine Slaughter Hardy was no longer the woman who'd perfected the art of hiding from her own truth. She was a mother, a wife, a friend to those who deserved her friendship, and a woman who'd finally learned the difference between a life that looked perfect and a life that actually was. The transformation hadn't been easy. It had cost her some relationships, some positions, some of the respect she'd worked years to build. But it had given her something more valuable, the chance to live authentically, to love openly, and to be proud of the choices she'd made, even the difficult ones. As she got ready for bed, Christine caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked the same as she had 6 months ago, but something in her eyes was different. The fear was gone, replaced by something she'd never expected to see there: peace. Tomorrow she would start planning her trip to New York to visit Sophia and Stephen. Next month, she would return to volunteer work at the hospital, where her expertise and compassion were welcomed without judgment. Next year, if God willing, she might become a grandmother to children who would know her story from the beginning and love her not despite it, but because of it. But tonight, she was simply Christine, no longer perfect, no longer hiding, no longer afraid of the truth about who she was and what she'd done. Some bridges, she'd learned, were worth burning, because sometimes the only way to reach the life you're meant to live is to destroy the one that's keeping you trapped. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people who matter most will meet you on the other side.